Welcome and thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. For all of our listeners out there today who tried many modalities, especially perhaps ones we've shared here on the program, and you're still trying to find a way that you can manage better sleep, try to reduce anxiety, improve self-development, perhaps birth preparation and preparing for other major life events, you might really want to listen to our program today as we're bringing to you something that I, quite frankly, in the last 30 years of broadcasting have never really heard of before. Joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program today, who started her journey at the age of 15 years old to overcome health issues. She learned early on ways to positively connect with herself and embrace a new way of living. This particular journey led her to become an osteopathic practitioner. And in that particular journey, she discovered something known that was discovered in Switzerland as sophrology. She joins us here on the Beyond 50 radio program today to talk about the life-changing power of sophrology, which happens to be the title of her very book, best-selling author. I'd like to welcome to the Beyond 50 radio program today our guest, Ms. Dominique Antiglio. Dominique, thank you for joining us here on the program today.
Hello. Nice to be here. Thank you for inviting me. That's great.
Well, I can see this really must work for you to hear that delightful voice come through the airwaves. I think people feel relaxed already.
Okay, good. I'm glad.
Now, this really started, when you were describing how you were as a teenager, this day and age, you're hearing more, and in fact, to me, it's become an epidemic, especially among teenagers and the young, to have especially high social anxiety to the point, and I've had personal experience with this, where they're shutting themselves down in their bedrooms, sometimes for months or even years on end. What do you think is going on there from your perspective, and how was it for you that you found, this is something I need to change for myself?
Yeah, gosh, I agree with you. I mean, we live in a special time where there are lots of pressures around, and I think kids feel that. I think social media, TV, and all the constant flow of information we get doesn't really help. And from my experience, when I was 15 years old, I was a student, I was playing basketball, I was living in Switzerland, quite a normal life, I would say. And the tension started to manifest for me through my body. So my body started to feel super tired. I always had infection, like recurrent infection that wouldn't really clear. My sleep was not great. And I wasn't very happy at school. I knew I had to go to school, but I was not one of these persons that thrives on school and friends. So, as I was struggling a bit with my health, I went to see my doctor, my family doctor, and he did all sorts of tests. And he could see, that I wasn't feeling great, but he didn't really find something medically wrong. So he told me, why don't you see a sophrologist? And like you at the time, I had never heard of this word sophrology. And so I decided to give it a try, because I think I was so desperate to find my energy back and my positivity, my motivation, and feel better. So I met that amazing sophrologist one day who taught me really simple combination of practices involving the breath, visualization, very simple moves to help me connect with my body, and some visualization exercises. And the combination she used was very unique, and she led me through the exercise, and she recorded the exercise and said, it was only a 10-minute exercise, and she said, now you go home and you try to practice for a week, every day 10 minutes, and then you come back next week. And I literally did that. And for 5 weeks, I practiced 10 minutes a day. And guess what? After 5 weeks, I was completely back to normal. My energy was back. My sleep was much deeper. My infection cleared. And all the symptoms I had at the time never came back. But I think what was more important there is that I realized I could actually connect to myself in a different way that I didn't need to feel the pressure that was around me. I discovered, that I could be in the driving seat of my life, and I think those adolescents who are, kind of going away from society, and I think this is also because they're overwhelmed and they're trying to escape the tension they're in by, kind of going in another world. And I think, my way was to tense my body, and I hadn't realized all the tension I was carrying within. And Sophrology actually helped me to reconnect to that and to understand and let go of these tensions, and then start to focus on my inner resources, like positive resource, and see I could influence my situation, I could influence the way I live my life rather than being passive or feeling under pressure all the time. So that was my journey,
Now, Dominique, one of the things that I wanted to make clear, especially to our listeners, about what was happening with you at this particular time was this. So you're going to the doctor to find out, what's wrong with me and how can this get corrected. And your doctor decided to, even knowing that he couldn't find anything physically wrong, to prescribe medication. And when the particular dose wasn't really working, he decided, why don't we increase this? And it seemed that, from what I remember reading, that it was increased something like 3 times for something they couldn't figure out what the problem was. And that, to me, was alarming, just reading that part of it by itself. Because think about using medication over time, what you're slowly doing to the body, creating problems that become even probably worse than they were to begin with in the first place. And here, through grace, somehow, you were introduced to something that's non-invasive, and according to what you wrote here, is something everyone can use and can feel its effects relatively soon.
Yeah, it was amazing, like the change. That, I think that's what really struck me, and to this day, that's the motivation I have to talk about Sophrology, because it was, I was probably ready to welcome it in my life somewhere or another. You can't be forced into these things, but if you give it a try, then it really shifts quite quickly, and it did for me. So I'm really grateful, because then these tools are really things you can use for your life and for many situations, exams preparation. I use that through university, all the decision you have to take when you're younger about where do you go with your life, or even after. We constantly have pressures and ways, done. And having a simple way to just tune in and find answers to your connecting to your deeper self in a very easy way. That's what we need in this society. I think a lot of us are disconnecting because we're connected outward. We're connected in the phone, on our emails, worrying, looking at the news, and we literally forget that there is a reservoir of positivity and resource within body and mind, and that if we connect there, we will really feel empowered, and happy. So that's so important.
Now, I think what's important, so that people can come to understand and get a feel for Sophrology, how it works, the kind of exercises that you have in the book, one of the important elements that you were just talking about was this, the idea of being connected to yourself. And I really thought a lot about that as I was reading that, because one of the things I knew was I was growing up was that feeling of being self-aware. Like, man, I'm alive. This is really something else. And sometimes when you really just kind of sit with that feeling for a bit, at first it feels kind of weird, but then it becomes really miraculous all at the same time. And so what you're saying, it's unique because that a lot of times people live their lives the idea, am I measuring up to what people think I should be in the outside world? It could be from your parents. I was just watching, in fact, a documentary the other day called Generation Wealth, and it raises the question, for instance, how do we look at what the American dream is? It used to be this, but now it's turned into, well, I want to be basically wealthy with power and famous all at the same time based on what I'm being shown here, whether it's through a cell phone that you're holding or a television program that you're watching, and you figure, well, the first way from relief is quit watching any of that. Go out and sit under a tree and listen to the wind breeze through the leaves. But let's go ahead and talk about how a lot of times we'll get up and most of our movements in the day we're in our head, and that's leading us usually through filters, through past experiences and the potential anxiety of what we think the future brings us.
Yes, no, I totally agree. I think a lot of the time I call it automatic pilot. It's like we're conditioned by a lot of experience, things we've learned, things society shows, and it's very easy to just follow that and think this is the only way. So when Professor Caicedo, the founder of Sophrology, was a neuropsychiatrist, he created Sophrology not only to be able to dive within and find new resources through more awareness and consciousness, but also to dive deep to find what are our life values. Like we have exercise in Sophrology where we, in that state of relaxation during the practice, we guided to look for our own values. Sophrology doesn't say what you have to value in your life. It doesn't really speak about compassion or like the usual values that other techniques have. It's really a path of freedom, and it's really about tuning in, and you're given the tool to explore what matters for you. What is it that you want to wake up for in the morning? How can you gain more freedom from experience or past programming? And I think this is a very important thing and very modern. Even if it was created in the 60s, basically, I think it's even more important these days because, like, a lot of our intrinsic life values are just being ignored, and I think we're, as you said, the measurement of success it's all very superficial in a way. But when we connect to body and mind and we really listen to our heart, we can experience and start to embody new values and values that really speaks to us rather than being told what we should value in life, And that's I say in my book, it's using your value as a guide, because I think that's a wonderful thing to have. If you have clarity around your value when a situation happens, or you have to take a decision, or you have to buy something, or you can look for that and say, okay, does that feel right for me? Is that what I really want? And how I can create more awareness around the way I live and feeling happy and at peace with what I own or my definition of success or whatever people want, Now,
I'm curious about this, Dominique, as you were beginning this practice. What insights did you have about yourself where you thought, wow, I'd never seen that before? That really surprised you.
Oh, gosh, I think I have some every day still, That's the beauty of life. I think when you practice, and now I'm a mother and, life has moved on, but I still, look for insights and all the time, So I think that the first one I had when I was a teenager was, I think that was really like that I had like a little superpower inside, that suddenly at 15 I was given the tool to connect somewhere inside me where things looked different, where the perspective was different, where my teacher were no longer scary, where my friends were were not a pressure, where my parents' value or expectation mattered less. I think it just gave me a sense of freedom and hope, like hope that I could actually live a different life, that maybe not changing. I still had to go to school, of course, and carry on my studies because I was only 15, but it gave me a sense of perspective and hope that, I was going to go to the next step, and I will have more choice, and that sense of hope, I think in any situation, it's really key. We all need to feel this and feel confident about the future, and that's one aspect of Sophrology that we cultivate a lot. First, we learn to be present, grounded in the body, and then we learn to envisage our future in a positive way. So that's why we use visualization. We open the mind to new possibilities in that relaxed state, and after a while, your mind just goes there and say, okay, yes, this is what I'd like to create. This is where I'm aiming at, and there's more clarity and more hope around everything in the present moment towards the future. And that's a very powerful energy to be in.
Now, let's go ahead and talk about a couple of exercises that perhaps our listeners can take away, at least from the show, before they go on to pick up the book and go a lot deeper for themselves and embark on this incredible journey. Now, one of them I thought about today was really kind of fun because you were talking about a special word. And it was kind of fun to read this particular exercise, using a good word that creates a positive image, so to speak. And I was reminded of a time in a place where I worked. It was a machining company, manufacturing. And there was a person who worked there who was the inspector. He would inspect, he was quality control is what he was. And he reminded me a lot, for the listeners and for you, of the guy, when you see the movie Ghostbusters, he was the guy with the glasses. Okay, Dr. Ivan Spengler, I think was his name. And, and he was a lot of fun. But anyway, we started getting into this fun thing. I don't even know how it started, but it was something that we continued, and it made work a lot of fun, especially in a place like that. And that would be to see what kind of long technical word we could create for something simple. For instance, like a pencil, for instance, could be a word creation tool for, instead of just a pencil. And the idea was to see how long of a word or set of words we could use that would actually rename something pretty simple. And it was funny how the brain would actually get to work on that because, you're becoming creative, you're stretching yourself beyond with words that you're not used to using. But whenever you would see him, we would both get delighted at seeing each other and happy at the fact, okay, what are we going to come up with now?
That's lovely. It's using, it reminds me of how we see the mind in Sophrology. So we use the mind as a resource, and the story that you explain, it just tells me that you both had this wonderful ability to be creative with your mind, and perhaps in a work that's kind of repetitive, where you could become kind of on automatic pilot, you kind of made your mind work and switched on to stay present and that's a wonderful resource, and that's what we talk about in Sophrology. We have a lot of resources in many situations of life, and sometimes they naturally express, like in your story, but sometimes they don't, and this is why sometimes we need the practice to just give us a boost and become creative about a situation we're in. And we're using words or pictures or that we create ourselves during the practice, because if you, for example, lack confidence and you are with eyes closed, you're relaxed, and you're kind of, in that zone that Sophrology brings you in after the body scan, and you welcome a positive word of your choice, and you start to breathe it in and out and really focus on that word, it becomes like a mantra, and actually your energy will raise, and your mind will become more focused, and that's one of the many techniques that we have, and it really works after a while, like you just repeat the practice and you will feel more confident, you will feel more energetic, and then you can reuse this at any time, because if you practice for 10 minutes a day and suddenly you enter a meeting space and you freeze because, I don't know, you're scared about talking or meeting someone, then you can just go back to that simple tool of the breath and your word, and instantly your brain will remember. It will remember that in that relaxed state you felt calm and confident, and this you can reproduce in any situation in a very quick way. It just takes a little bit of practice.
Now, I know one of the things you talked about is the idea that people think this could be related to meditation and breathing exercises. You described that generally the exercises could take no more than 10 minutes a day. So let's talk about the initial process of sophrology and how it works.
So Sophrology was created by a neuropsychiatrist, and therefore it's a blend of Eastern practices like yoga and meditation with Western science of psychology, phenomenology, philosophy. And Caicedo, he created the technique around 12 levels. So each level has a specific intention, and the aim of Sophrology is to really bring a sense of harmony within. And we say harmony of consciousness, which means that we want body, mind, and for those who believe there's a soul, to be really in flow and connecting to each other and in a healthy state. So all the exercise bring more harmony in consciousness and kind of unlock your inner resources. So each level, like level 1, for example, we have sequences of practices. We also practice standing and do very gentle moves to learn to ground ourselves in the awareness of the body. So because, when you're stressed, you don't listen to your body anymore. You're just focused in your mind, in your future, you're anxious, but you don't use the awareness of your body in a positive way. You perhaps notice tensions, but you're not noticing all the beautiful sensation of calm, of relaxation, of empowerment that your body has in stock. And once we feel really grounded, we explore the mind and all its infinite possibilities, like I've explained before, with trusting your future, being happy, using your focus, your concentration, your imagination. Level 3 brings body and mind together, so you experience what it is to be really connected between body and mind and how powerful that connection is in your daily life. And level 4 is about your values. So once you've created that stronger center, you are able to use your values as a guide. So you choose what your values are and how you want to live with them, etc. Until level 12, where you explore different aspects using sound, so it's really a beautiful journey. And on the side of that, you have specific techniques for stress management, for preparing for important events, which are described in my book as the super tools. And those super tools are really tailored practices for things like something you'd like to overcome, a state of anxiety, or something you'd like to succeed in your life. And then we have created those specific techniques to help you this way.
Now, one thing to make note of here, and I think this is something to clearly be understood about this, is that it also is a way that we can manage our emotions in a way that we can begin to be more present in any given situation. Because I noticed that one of the arenas that this sort of evolved from, and correct me if I'm wrong, was Japanese Zen. Okay,
Yes.
Japanese Zen meditation. I like that because for those who may have heard the term but aren't familiar with the practice, Zen is completely about bringing yourself in the moment as it actually is.
Yeah.
I would say, and 100% of the time, and in most cases, people don't tend to be in situations and really truly experience them as they are, because the experience, first, the energy comes at them. It could be a boss coming to say, hello, could you do this? But the first thing is you've got a reaction in your stomach that kind of turns a little bit. He's about to chew me out and tell me, I'm going to get a pay decrease, or, all these things that we think are going to happen rather than what actually is about to happen. So then we'll tend to answer or react. And there's the key word I wanted to use, that we tend to, if you're not living in, let's say, the Zen state, what you're living in is a reactionary state. And so, and what's unique about that too, Dominique, because I was just having a conversation with someone the other day about that. I said, or they were asking, well, what does it mean basically to, I guess, it's a little different, but this is basically what it was. I was saying, you learn to initiate action, okay, rather than react.
Yeah.
And you're more empowered from that state than you are in a reactionary state, but most people live in reactionary states.
Yeah, we do, because it does take a little bit of practice to change that, because that's how, we kind of live like in kind of a normal state sometimes. So it takes a little bit of practice and a willingness to change that. And once you start, it just becomes more and more normal, and it's so much more comfortable. But I think the key here is that when you start to really connect with what is for you in the moment, sometimes it's actually uncomfortable, because initially you might feel angry at something, or you might feel scared by a situation, or you might feel a lot of tension in your body. And so Sophrology, invites people to embrace and work through those states. For example, at the beginning of each practice, we do a simple body scan, sitting or standing, and then we take a moment to use the breath to acknowledge and then recognize and then let go of the tension we feel we're in. Initially, tension in the body, but then also tension in the mind. So we take a moment to really look at these tension, almost saying, hello, I've seen you, tension. I know you're here. Now let's work together, and let's flow in a different way, and we take a moment to acknowledge that, and that feels so good, at the end of a day where you've been super busy, to just have that self-care and self-love, to just realize, okay, this is the state I'm in. And then once you've cleared that, there's much more space actually to bring enjoyment of the present moment, because I think we're never very far of enjoying life. It's not far, it's just next to that tension. There is that happiness, those resources of confidence. It's just next to it. So, but sometimes we need to accept we need to travel through something that's a bit more uncomfortable, and then we can be on the other side. And it's a constant willingness to adapt and to recognize and to own your experience. And I think that's what I learned when I was 15, is that, yes, I couldn't change my teacher, and they made me feel scared sometimes or worried, but I could decide the way I want to experience this moment with them. I didn't need to be scared. I could perhaps see things differently and just rely on the awareness of my body in a positive way, or rely on my creativity in the moment to to just be present with what was happening, and that's the way you transform your life, really. Sometimes you don't even need to change your life. You change from the inside, and that's sufficient. So
I think that's actually in more cases more true than trying to change everything outside of you, because what you're experiencing outside of you is really a direct reflection of what's coming from inside of you in the first place.
Exactly.
Isn't it? Right.
Exactly.
Now, here was an exercise, because we're right on this particular subject, and I like this because one thing I'm reminded of was the work of Byron Katie. And so I'm sure you're familiar with her, but for those who aren't, she works on a thing called an inquiry. So what we're talking about right here, Dominique, is really unique. Before we talk about this next exercise, but it was the idea of for me, it was paying attention to how much my thoughts were actually driving how I was feeling. And everybody can relate to this when they experience what's called the Monday morning blues. I don't think anybody out there would get that test question wrong when I say, what is the Monday morning blues? A, is it this? B, C, D, right? But the idea is that you'll go into work on a Monday morning with a preset, all the string of thoughts that really put you in a sour mood, hence the Monday morning blues. Now, I remember as I began thinking about my thinking and catching it, how, like you said, it's an exercise that takes some time, but once it's implemented, the brain starts making it automatic, which was the cool part about it. So let's say, for instance, that you might be out in public and you hear, let's say, a cashier giving off that kind of energy where they're going to be rude. So the first thought is, boy, this person seems awfully rude, and then a string of thoughts begin following that. Before you know it, by the time you get up to the cashier, you're ready to slap him upside the head. See, and you don't even know this guy. You've met him for the first time. But what I would do, just to give an idea, is I would catch that thought. Well, what evidence do I have right now, as Byron Katie would say, that this guy is actually rude? Where does my mind go when I think this person is rude? And I got so entertained at catching, actually, and snaring that thought, almost like, in a barbed wire fence catching a running animal, that pretty soon I seen that I was in that state where each time something like that would arise, I would actually catch it and ask it questions. And inevitably, what was funny was, well, I actually don't have any evidence this person is really rude, and it became funny after a while. So when you approach that person and say that circumstance, you were doing it with a smile like, I want to get to know who this person is. There's being in the moment.
Yeah.
Now, your exercise is called, in sophrology, the pump. Let's talk about what that is.
Yeah. So the pump is a way to acknowledge again and release those tensions. So let's say that you're with this cashier and you're really frustrated. You're going in the parking and you take your car and you feel all this tension because that person got on your nerves, So then perhaps when you get home, instead of just continuing your day and not dealing with it, you could use the pump as a way to release tension. So the pump is a simple exercise where you stand, you close your eyes, you get to that state of relaxation through the body scan, and then you bring your arms alongside your body, you clench your fists, and you start to do a little pumping exercise with your shoulders towards your ears and down whilst you hold your breath. And when you exhale, after a while, you repeat that pumping exercise with the holding your breath. And when you're ready, you exhale and you release the shoulders down. And suddenly, as you do that, you start to notice sensation in your body. And if you hold the breath long enough and do that exercise, you will create sensation in your body. Perhaps warmth, perhaps you feel your heart rate raising a little bit. And you can use this as a way to acknowledge the tension you feel and say, okay, I let it go. And the fact that you're using your body plus your mind is really powerful, because everything that you've stored, the tension you've stored through your mind and body, is just given a way to let go. And the other aspect that's really positive is that you you learn to refocus the mind somewhere else. You ask to listen to your sensations rather than being in your mind. Because I think we spend so much time in the mind, and through sophrology we learn to calm the mind by connecting with the awareness of the body, and step by step to let go of tension in the body and create a very positive connection with your body, which feels like a home and a place where in any situation you can work through your tension and reconnect to a sense of positivity. So that's how you would, on the go. That's a really simple exercise that you can do on the go. It doesn't perhaps summarize the power of sophrology as a whole, but I think it's a very powerful technique to use on the go if you even find it hard to meditate and to be really still. A lot of my clients are very busy people working in the city in London, and they are all under adrenaline, and if they start to meditate, they feel all that tension, and so that really helps to clear it.
Now, here's one more exercise that I'd like to bring up. I kind of get a kick out of this. See, we're actually giving you easy ones to remember. The pump, and here's another one, the bag. Now, what's that all about?
Yes. Yeah, the bag. Okay, so the bag is a really fun exercise. So, when you have a lot of negative thoughts and think or belief about yourself or about a situation, and you find that everything is blocked and you're not sure what your next step is, or you don't even want to take the next step. So the bag is a symbolic act in a way. So you are closing the eyes, relaxing your body, you're standing, and you imagine that you have a bag in front of you. And in this bag, every time you exhale, you use your arm to put the stuff you don't want to deal with, or the negative stuff, really, all the stuff you don't really need that blocks your life, and then you use your arm symbolically to destroy the bag, and imagine that all the pieces of the bag, they fall on the floor and you start to step on it. Like kids when they're really kind of angry and they step on their feet like this. So you do that, and you bring these pieces into dust. You pretend they become dust, and then you collect the dust and you throw it to a window, an imaginary window, just to let it go. And you ask for this to be transformed. And that's a symbolic act you can do on the go. And if you do this in a really relaxed state, when you finish, you can sit down and notice the sensation that this has triggered in your body, in your emotion. If you're really letting go of that, your body will react, and you can do it quite forcefully. Like I have sometimes athletes, they're very physical, so they do this in a very strong way. Or I have people who do this even more like with the mind and in a very gentle way. And that has proven to be a really good way to let go of tension again when you're just overwhelmed, really.
Now, Dominique, I know we've spent a good portion of the program here talking about how sophrology helps people to reduce or hopefully eliminate anxiety. You're sleeping better, you're feeling better, that sort of a thing. But what about for people who say, I'm not doing too bad of a job in those arenas there, but there are some life goals, especially big ones, that I would like to pursue. How has sophrology helped people, for instance, want to have that life they're looking for once they discover truly what that is, and using sophrology to help implement that?
Yeah, I think whether it's an event you want to succeed, like a competition, a speech, or something quite close to you, or some radical change or things you want to implement in your life, or have a life goal, or find more purpose, I think, this comes through the practice, because the way the practice is structured and takes you to these different parts like the present, the future, letting go of the past, finding your values. The whole method is geared that you actually dive inside and find those answers, but not with your mind, not trying to reason them, because I don't think you can find your goal in life just by thinking about it. I think it comes from a deeper place. It comes from a place of your soul or your biology, or, staying in that space of connection with yourself. And I immensely trust that sometimes we don't know where we need to go, and I think it's more by letting go of the question and really connecting and being in that space that we are then shown through very easy things in life. When you practice sophrology, you start to notice things happening in your daily life, and there's so many opportunities to actually find answer, being given answer, an encounter, an article you read, something happens in your life. And there's, I think the universe just shows you the way if you're willing to connect, and it sounds a little, perhaps a little crazy, but I think, the practice itself, just journeying through the different techniques, including the visualization, the connection of the body, will create that sense of security to know who you are and where you're going. And that's the whole aim of Sophrology, to become self-directed human being that have the intuition to do what feels right, So, yeah. So any of the techniques really in Sophrology will help you reach that state.
Now, just to be clear, too, it isn't just one or two exercises, but Sophrology, from my understanding, has 12 steps?
Yeah, 12 levels, yeah.
Oh, yeah, 12 levels there. That's the correct thing. And as people will read in the book, The Life-Changing Power of Sophrology, you realize you have to do one step, then go to the next one, or, that sort of a thing there, that you don't just pick and choose. But from time to time, picking and choosing is okay, too. I mean, it isn't where you just absolutely have to be set on the system from one to the other, do you?
No, I think for the purpose of explaining what sophrology is and what is unique about it, I had to speak about the 12 levels. But, most of my clients here in London, they do level 1 and 2, and this gives them a lot of tools already. So in no matter you have to do 12 levels to feel a difference. I think you can do 5-10 minute practice of sophrology and already be a little calmer, have a deeper sleep, feel already, have a bit more clarity. So, it's every practice counts really, and it doesn't matter where, if you do a little amount or a big amount, it's what feels right for you. But I think it is important to kind of progress through the different exercise like I show it in my book, because this will give you a strong foundation, and this will ensure you're guided properly through that journey. But these steps are really simple. They're really about the body scan, the use of the breath, the use of some simple moves. So it's nothing difficult really.
Well, I want to thank you, first of all, Dominique, for coming on the program and sharing again. I'd never even heard of sophrology until this. And I've been out there 20-plus years, especially in the arena of self-help, going, what's sophrology? And I was really intrigued by this and thought the listeners should find out about it. Is there a website people can discover more information, get questions answered, maybe where to get the book, things like that?
Yes, of course. So my book is available on Amazon.com and or any other American, place where you used to buy your books. And my website is bsophro.com. So it's be.sophro. So it's sophro.com. And you can find everything about sophrology. You can find the audio practices that go with my book, lots of videos and interesting articles about sophrology, and there's plenty of resources there that you can. And I'm filming an online course at the moment, so for people who need like more of a visual help with learning, then this probably will help them as well. So yeah.
So b-sophro, sophro.com is the website you can go to. The book is The Life-Changing Power of Sophrology. Our guest today, Dominique Antiglio. Dominique, thank you so much for being on the program with us today.
Thank you.
You bet. We want to thank you, the listeners out there, for tuning in. You can discover more at beyond50radio.com. That is the number 50. We encourage you to sign up for our weekly e-newsletter. Keep up to date with what's going on in the world of Beyond 50 as well as our upcoming programs. I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you for joining us. This is the Beyond 50 radio program, and remember, live your day past halfway.